Perfect. What's going on, guys? Welcome to the lab. All right, so what we're doing today, as you can see, I have a ton of stuff in front of me. What does that mean? We're making lasagna. So this is one of the dishes that whenever I go somewhere for a potluck or people are coming over, this is what they request more often than anything else. So I'm going to break it down real simple. It's not hard. It looks like a lot of stuff, but this is not crazy. So what we're going to need our tomatoes. Now, just like the meatball subs, we want our San Marzan tomatoes. If you don't want to get them, grab a couple cans of crushed tomato and a couple cans of diced tomato. That'll do the trick. Don't worry about it. On top of that, what we're going to need is an onion, a green pepper, a pack of mushrooms, and that's pretty much going to cover our sauce. We want some garlic, pepper, salt, and sugar to add to that on top of the veg that we're going to have in there. I use a couple cans of this tomato paste. Now the reason I'm going to use this tomato paste is because that sauce that we made for the meatballs the last time, it's a little looser. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want something a little thicker so that when you cut your lasagna up, it doesn't onto the plate. You want it to actually stay into a nice little portionable square and not kind of everywhere. With that, we are going to obviously have to have nudes. I buy the kind that you boil. You can get fresh stuff if you want to make fresh stuff. That's going to be ideal. I don't do that because I buy these and I keep them in cover and they're ready to go whenever I need them. And we're going to need a little bit of olive oil. Olive oil, same thing we did before. We're going to use the olive oil and the garlic, and we're going to toss that with our chopped up vegetables, roast it in the oven, put that into our tomatoes for our sauce. And lastly, what we're going to need is that, that middle cheesy layer that you want to do. Some people do ricotta, some people do ricotta, whatever you want to call it. Some people do cottage cheese. I do a little mix of cottage cheese and cream cheese. So I also will probably toss in a little tiny bit of parm in that mixture and on top when we finish with our mozzarella. Mozzarella is going to go on top. It's going to get nice and brown and bubbly. That's going to be a beautiful dish. So that's everything that you need, except I have a pan here that I have about 1.5 pounds of ground beef, 1.5 pounds of pork. So that's going to be our meat mixture. That's going to go into the sauce. We're going to just do a quick fry on that. That's going to go into our sauce, soak all that up, and we're going to make a nice meat lasagna. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to get this meat going on high heat, then get to chopping these vegetables, and I'm going to come back in a few minutes, and we're going to show you the next step. All right, guys, I got that meat going. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get the rest of the vegetables cooking. Just like the last time when we did the meatball subs, we're going to get giant spoonful, actually 2, of garlic on top of those vegetables that we cut up. With that, we are going to get some olive oil on it. I use extra virgin olive oil. You can use whatever you've got on hand. Get that nice and coated. Now we're going to fire that into the oven at about 400 degrees. Give that about 10 minutes and that should toast up nicely. Make sure you give those guys a little mix just so that they're coated. That's going to cook them up a lot better. So we're going to fire that into the oven again, 400 for about 10 minutes. One sec. Now we're going to get to work on that sauce. Now I got 2 pots here. Why do I have 2 pots? Well, the reason I have 2 pots is because this is a giant can of tomatoes. It's probably going to make a little bit more than what we need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually separate some and reserve some for later. So what the reserve is going to be for, I usually take it and make pizza sauce, and then I pop that in the freezer in Ziploc bags or some type of container, and then I use that at a later date. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our tomatoes. Now here's a little trick that I like to do. Take the can of tomatoes, put it down, Take the pot, put it on top, slide the bottom, turn it upside down. No mess. Look at that. We're done. So don't try to dump that in that little pot. I know that works with the stock pot. This small pot, which is almost full, does not work. Now, with these tomatoes, what we're going to do is we're going to add our blend of seasonings that I forgot to mention earlier. The blend of seasonings is thyme, oregano, basil, and parsley flakes. About a tablespoon of each, a little tiny bit more basil. So you're probably going to go 1, maybe 2 tablespoons of basil. So drop that in. I'm going to go give the meat a quick stir and I'll be right back. All right, guys. Just got the meat stirred. I got it turned off because it's just about ready. What we want to do now is add to our pot of tomatoes. We're going to do sugar, a little more than half a cup. I'm just using this bowl, but I just use because I don't want to dirty up more stuff. But between a half a cup and maybe 3/4, probably closer to half because you don't want it too sweet. We're going to add a little tiny bit of salt, probably about 3 tablespoons because this is a pretty big pot. And then I'm going to crack in some black pepper. All right, guys. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get the pot onto the stove. Hit that at about mid-heat. Let that just boil a tiny bit. And what that's going to do is start softening up the tomatoes. Once it gets to a bit of a boil, simmer it, let it cook for a little bit, and then what we're going to do is we're going to hit it with the immersion blender. If you don't have one, before you do the tomatoes in, remember, we can take the can and we can bend it. I'll show you. You can take this can and you can bend the end of it and you can pour that easily into your blender and you can just blend this down. Easy peasy. So we're going to get that cooking. Once that's been on for about 10-15 minutes, I'm going to come back. We're going to start putting the rest together. All right, guys, it's getting a little warm in here, so tarp's off. Got the vegetables out of the oven that we were cooking, the onions, the pepper, mushrooms, garlic, olive oil. So remember when I said we're going to have 2 pots? Once these vegetables and the meat go into one pot, it's going to be too much. So what we're going to do is we're going to get these vegetables in. Now there's a little trick. Pick it up. Make sure you got it sealed kind of at the top so you got both sides. You're making kind of a little tunnel. That's it. Vegetables are in the pot. There's no worrying. That's it. Done. All right, so once the vegetables are in the pot, what we're going to do is we're going to blend up the tomatoes because they've been on for about 15 minutes, so those are now on a simmer. After I blend those up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix a little bit into this to make it easier to blend these up with the immersion blender. Once that's done, then I'm going to add the meat. Then I'm going to add a little more sauce until we get the right consistency. I'll show you how to do all that. It's going to be super simple. Again, if you don't have the immersion blender, what you do with these guys, if you've already blended the tomato sauce, you take a couple spoonfuls of the tomato sauce, put that in your blender, take that little envelope that we made, slide these into your blender, blend that up. Donezo. Easy peasy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get working on that. I'll be back in 2 seconds. All right, now, guys, so what we got now is we got the meat mixed in. So what we did first, we added the tomatoes to the vegetables. We blended all that together, added the meat in. It was a little too liquid, I guess. And then so what we did is I added a little bit more of the just pureed tomatoes in, the sauce that we made, just to get it all a nice consistency here. So what's going to happen is I'm going to let that simmer. It's probably going to go for about an hour. So the longer you let it simmer, the more those juices from the tomatoes are all going to soak, plump up that meat and everything. So the longer you let that go, the better that's going to taste. So let that go for about an hour on low. Once that's done, I'm going to come back and I'm going to tell you how to put the rest of it together. which is just pretty much noodles and cheese, and then we're laughing, guys. So we'll be back. All right, guys, so the sauce has been going for probably an hour or two. I took it off the heat, let it sit for a little bit and start to cool down for us to put this together. There's just a couple more steps here. So you can see I got water starting to boil behind me. And then the only other thing we have to do is we have to put together the cheese layer, and we're gonna have to grate our mozzarella. So I'm not gonna bore you with the mozzarella. I'm gonna do that off camera. All we're gonna do is get our food processor, our cream cheese. Don't leave the little piece of plastic in, because that's not going to be tasty. Our cream cheese and our cottage cheese. Now I use a 2%. I know that you can get lasagna cottage cheese, but I mean, realistically so far, there's not a whole lot bad in this dish. So I go a little bit of a lighter cream cheese. It also helps if you get the fat-free or the extra low fat, like the 1% or the 0.5% or whatever it is. What you want to do, take that into like a strainer, like a mesh strainer. You can put that in, and like a lot of that extra liquid will like come out overnight, and that's deadly. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to put it back on the food processor because I ran out of outlets here. There's no room to do it in front of you. It's loud anyway, so we're not going to do that. And lastly, make sure when you're going to do your pasta, salt your water. Because if you don't salt your water, that pasta is not going to get its seasoning. That's the only time you can really salt it. So salt the water, and you're going to get that into the noodles when you cook them. So I'm going to salt that. Just a couple spoonfuls. Nothing too crazy. Nothing crazy. And then just cook your noodles to the specifications on the box. This, I think, is 9 minutes. You can buy the ones that are no cook. I like these better just because I know they're cooked and you're not going to have any of those hard spots still in it. Ideally, again, you want fresh if you can. I like doing this. You keep them in the cupboard. You got them for whenever you want to do it. So I'm going to get this going, get the noodles on, and I'm going to come back and we're going to put this together. We're going to eat, then we're going to sleep. All right, guys, the noodles are just about done. So we're going to get those out in a minute. I got the cream cheese, cottage cheese mixture all blended up. Like, that's thick. That's not going anywhere. I dropped a little tiny bit of salt in it. Because sometimes I use feta, but I didn't have that handy. So I dropped a little tiny bit of feta, a little tiny bit of parsley flakes in it. If you don't have the food processor, what you can do is you can use your potato masher, also known as that thing in your cupboard that prevents you from opening the cupboard. That's what that is. So you can just mash that stuff up in a bowl, and that's going to get the consistency that you need. So let's get these noodles off. We're going to take those and we're going to pour those into the strainer in our sink. While you got those sitting there, give those guys a quick rinse in cold water, and that's going to stop the cooking process a lot quicker because those are done. So give those a quick flash in cold water, give them a little toss. Let those sit, and then we're going to start putting this together. All right, guys, time to get this together. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to start scooping out our sauce. You want a nice layer at the bottom. You don't want it too thick. You don't want it too thin. You just want to coat the pan. That's it. If you have a casserole dish, great. I'm using just a disposable tin that I bought at Costco. I'm actually making this particular lasagna for a friend of mine who recently lost a family member. And I think that the last thing that they need to do is worry about making dinner tonight. So dinner's on me. So I'm using the disposable one, but you can do that and toss it in the recycle when you're done, or if you have a good casserole dish. We're just coating the bottom. See that? That's so thick from the 2 cans of tomato paste. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. I thickened it with the 2 cans. This has been a long process, so I'm starting to forget. So we just want to get that bottom coated, then get the layer of noodles in. 1, 2, 3, that covers the bottom of the pan. Get a different spoon so you're not crossing the sauces. You don't want to cross the sauce. Start layering in the cream cheese, cottage cheese mixture. All right, as you can see, we got the noodles covered in our cheese mixture. Now we're going to do more noodles. Once the noodles are done, depending on how much we can fit in the pan, we're going to go noodles, meat sauce, noodles. If there's room, cheese mixture, noodles, sauce, until we get to the top of the pan and we can't fit any more in. So is that going to be 2 layers? Is that going to be 3 layers? I don't know. We'll see what we can get in there because we're making a big ass lasagna. All right, guys, I got it layered up. So I was only able to get 1 more layer of that meat sauce. You can see that's pretty full. I got that other layer of noodles. What we have now is we have about 400 grams of mozzarella. I might not need it all, but we want to get that nice and coated over the top. Then all we want is a little sprinkle of the old parm on there. So that's it. Heat the oven at about 350. Cook this tented in foil for about 40 minutes, maybe 50 minutes. Take the foil off, let it cook until you start to get the bubble on the top. A little bit of browning in the cheese. Once that's done, you're done. So that's it. This is the lasagna. This one's going to a friend. I'm going to put another one together so we can see what it looks like when it's done, guys. All right, guys, so I got the one lasagna together and I was able to make myself a smaller portion. Like I said, I'm bringing one over to a friend, but I was able to do this isn't even a personal, this is probably enough for 2 or 3 people. So this is what we have happening here. So you can see it's browned up around the edges, nice and perfect. The cheese is all melted. The inside is going to be cooked perfectly. All we got to do now, so what I did is I cut around the edges with a knife. I did this before, so before you cut it, let it cool because you're not going to be able to eat it. It's going to steam. It's going to, basically ruin your mouth. So let it cool for about 15 minutes. Slide your knife around the edges. Get it lifted away from whatever your dish is. And then, cut it into pieces. I like a smaller knife because it's a little bit easier to navigate through it. Then we need the spatula. Get in there. Scoop that guy out. And well, this is what we're dealing with here. That is our homemade pork and beef lasagna with cream cheese and cheese filling. Cream cheese and cottage cheese filling. Let's see what that's like. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. That's what that looks like. Pretty good. Perfect. Absolute crowd pleaser every time. If you bring this to a potluck or anything, you're going to kill it. Gosh, that's deadly. So, anyways, if you have any questions, just comment, let me know. I'll answer whatever I can. Guys, don't be going hungry. Get after this.